Look at the Middle East today. Missiles crossing the night sky, proxy wars tearing nations apart. A deep, unbreakable hostility between East and West. At the center of it all stands one nation, the Islamic Republic of Iran. Today, it is a strict theocracy, isolated, defiant, but it wasn't always this way. Thousands of years ago, this same land was the heart of the greatest superpower the ancient world had ever seen, the Persian Empire. It was a realm of immense wealth, scientific brilliance, and unprecedented religious tolerance. It stretched from the borders of India to the gates of Greece. So, how did a tolerant, multicultural ancient empire transform into the fiercely isolated, theocratic state we see in the headlines today? How did Persia become Iran? To answer this, we must look past modern politics. This is a story of ancient poetry and forced religious conversions, of oil and CIA covert operations, of absolute monarchs, and a bloody revolution that divided the Middle East forever. To understand the change, we must first understand the name. The truth is, the people of this land never called their country Persia. In the ancient world, the Greeks fought a series of brutal wars against this massive empire from the east, because the ruling dynasty came from a specific southern province called Pars. The Greeks named the entire empire Persis. The Romans translated it to Persia, and the Western world used that name for over 2 millennia. But inside the empire, the people called their homeland something else. In their ancient tongue, they called it Eran, or Iran, meaning the land of the Aryans. For centuries, the West called them Persians, and they called themselves Iranians. But before the name could officially change, the soul of the empire had to be broken. In the 7th century AD, the Sassanid Persian Empire was dying. For over 400 years, they had fought a devastating, endless war against the Roman and Byzantine empires. They had exhausted their armies. They had emptied their treasuries. They were looking west, watching the Byzantines. They should have been looking south. In 636 AD, a storm erupted from the harsh deserts of Arabia. The newly united Muslim Arab armies, driven by the explosive energy of their new faith, surged into Persian territory. At the Battle of Al-Qadisiyah, the unthinkable happened. The exhausted, heavily armored Persian forces were utterly crushed by the fast-moving Arab cavalry. Within a few years, the mighty Persian Empire, which had stood for over 1,000 years, was wiped off the map. Zoroastrian fire temples were extinguished. The ancient Persian world was swallowed by the expanding Islamic Caliphate. When the Arab armies conquered Egypt, Syria, and North Africa, those regions changed forever. They adopted the Islamic faith, but they also adopted the Arabic language and Arab identity. They became the Arab world. But Persia was different. The Persians accepted Islam, but they fiercely refused to become Arabs. They clung to their ancient culture, even as Arabic became the language of religion and administration. The Persians secretly and stubbornly preserved their own language, Farsi. In the 10th century, a Persian poet named Ferdowsi wrote the Shahnameh, the Book of Kings. It was a massive epic poem, written entirely in Persian, recounting the glorious myths and history of pre-Islamic Persia. The Shahnameh saved the Persian language from extinction. It sent a clear message to the world. We are Muslims, but we are not Arabs. We are Persians. This distinct cultural identity would become the foundation of their survival, but their religious identity was about to undergo a violent, shocking transformation. To understand the Middle East today, you must understand the year 1501. For nearly 900 years after the Arab conquest, the vast majority of Persians were Sunni Muslims. They shared the same basic theology as their neighbors, including the rising Ottoman Empire to the west. But in 1501, a highly charismatic, ruthless 16-year-old boy named Ismail conquered the city of Tabriz. He declared himself the Shah of a new dynasty, the Safavids. Ismail was a religious fanatic. He followed Shia Islam, a minority branch of the faith, and he made a decision that would permanently fracture the Islamic world. He declared Shia Islam the official, mandatory state religion of his new Persian Empire. But the population was overwhelmingly Sunni. Ismail did not care. He offered his people a simple, brutal choice: convert to Shia Islam or die. Sunni mosques were destroyed, clerics were executed or forced into exile. It was a top-down, state-sponsored religious revolution, enforced by the sword. Over the next century, the blood-soaked policies of the Safavid Shahs worked. Persia became a fiercely Shia nation. This wasn't just about religion, it was about geopolitics. By becoming Shia, Persia created an ideological wall between themselves and their greatest rivals, the Sunni Ottoman Empire. It guaranteed that Persia would never be absorbed by a foreign caliphate. The Safavid revolution created the modern Iranian identity. And it is the exact same religious fault line that fuels the proxy wars between Iran and the Arab states today. By the 19th century, the Safavids were gone, replaced by the weak and corrupt Qajar dynasty. Persia was no longer a superpower. It was a chessboard. To the north, the expanding Russian Empire. To the south, the British Empire, desperate to protect its roots to India. This ruthless geopolitical rivalry became known as the Great Game. The British and Russians didn't conquer Persia directly. They simply bought it. They bribed the weak Persian kings, the Shahs, to sign away their nation. They sold the rights to build railways, print money, and harvest tobacco directly to foreign investors. The Persian people watched in humiliation as foreign powers bought their ancient nation piece by piece. And then, in 1908, a British businessman named William Knox Darcy struck something deep beneath the Persian soil, something far more valuable than gold: oil. It was the first major oil discovery in the Middle East. The British quickly formed the Anglo-Persian Oil Company, which would later become BP. This wasn't just about money, it was about global dominance. They extracted millions of barrels of Persian oil and used it to fuel the entire British Royal Navy through World War I. But the Persian people, whose land this oil came from, saw almost nothing of this wealth. They were starving. Their country was occupied. Their kings were puppets. The blood of Persia was being drained to power the West. A deep, burning resentment began to build in the hearts of the people. A resentment that would soon explode. In 1921, a tall, ruthless military officer named Reza Khan seized power in a bloodless coup. He crowned himself Shah and founded the Pahlavi dynasty. Reza Shah wanted to force his broken country into the modern age. He banned traditional clothing. He built railways and modern armies. And to signal this rebirth to the world, he made a historic demand. In 1935, Reza Shah sent a formal diplomatic letter to the League of Nations. He demanded that foreign diplomats and mapmakers stop calling his country Persia. From that day forward, they must use the true native name, Iran. It was a statement of aggressive nationalism, a message to the British and the Russians. Persia is dead. Iran is awake. But changing a name does not change reality. During World War II, the British and Soviets violently invaded Iran to secure its oil fields. Reza Shah was forced into exile, and his young, inexperienced son, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, was placed on the throne. By 1951, the Iranian people had had enough of foreign exploitation. They finally tasted real democracy, electing a brilliant, highly educated nationalist prime minister. His name was Mohammad Mossadegh. Mossadegh made a fatal, bold move. He nationalized the Iranian oil industry. He kicked the British out. He declared that Iran's oil belonged to the Iranian people. The British Empire was outraged. They boycotted Iranian oil. They blockaded the ports. But when Mossadegh refused to back down, the British turned to the United States for help. They knew America didn't care about British profits, so they played on America's deepest fear. They convinced Washington that Mossadegh was secretly aligning with Soviet communism. In August 1953, the CIA and British MI6 launched a covert mission that would change the Middle East forever. Operation Ajax. This wasn't a military invasion. It was an engineered catastrophe. The CIA bribed high-ranking Iranian military officers. They hired street thugs and criminals to stage massive, violent riots in Tehran. They planted fake news in the media to create artificial chaos. The coup succeeded. Prime Minister Mossadegh, the champion of Iranian democracy, was overthrown and placed under house arrest for the rest of his life. The United States restored the young Shah to absolute, unquestioned power. Western oil companies returned to Iran. For the Iranian people, it was the ultimate, unforgivable betrayal. Their brief taste of freedom and democracy had been crushed by Washington and London, all for the sake of cheap oil. The seed of anti-American hatred was planted, and it was watered with oil. Backed by American weapons and money, the Shah ruled Iran with an iron fist. He launched the White Revolution, a massive modernization program. He gave women the right to vote, redistributed land, and built Western-style cities. To the west, Iran looked like a miracle of progress, but beneath the glittering surface, Iran was bleeding. The wealth from the oil boom stayed in the hands of the elite. While the Shah threw a lavish, multi-million-dollar party in the desert to celebrate 2,500 years of the Persian Empire, millions of Iranians lived in crushing poverty. When people began to protest, the Shah unleashed his secret police, the terrifying Savak. They hunted down political dissidents, tortured them, and murdered them in secret prisons. The secular opposition was crushed. But the rapid westernization deeply offended the traditional religious working class. And from exile in Paris, a stern, unyielding Shia cleric began sending cassette tapes back to Iran. His name was Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini. His message was simple. The Shah is a corrupt puppet of America. Islam is the only solution. To the starving, oppressed, and angry masses of Iran, Khomeini sounded like a savior. By 1978, the pressure cooker exploded. Millions of people, students, Marxists, and religious fundamentalists marched together against the Shah. The military opened fire. Martial law was declared. In Tehran's Jaleh Square, the army shot dozens of protesters in an event known as Black Friday. But the killings only brought more people into the streets. The country was paralyzed by strikes. The army began to fracture. On January 16, 1979, realizing that all was lost, the Shah boarded an airplane. He fled Iran, never to return. The 2,500-year-old Persian monarchy had fallen. 2 weeks later, Ayatollah Khomeini returned to a hero's welcome. The revolution was complete, but the blood had not stopped flowing. The Marxists and students who had helped overthrow the Shah were quickly sidelined, imprisoned, or executed. Khomeini established a completely new, unprecedented system of government. Velayat-e-Faqih, the guardianship of the Islamic jurist. Absolute political power was handed to a supreme religious leader. Persia was officially dead. The Islamic Republic of Iran was born. Shortly after, enraged Iranian students stormed the US Embassy in Tehran, taking 52 Americans hostage for 444 days. The alliance between Washington and Tehran was shattered. It has never been repaired. Sensing weakness in the post-revolution chaos, the dictator of neighboring Iraq, Saddam Hussein, invaded Iran in 1980. What followed was an 8-year-long bloodbath that killed nearly 1 million people. But the brutal war only united the Iranian people and solidified Khomeini's grip on power. Today, the geopolitical shockwaves of 1979 are still shaking the world. Iran's fierce independence, its Shia identity forged by Shah Ismail, and its deep distrust of the West born from the 1953 CIA coup, dictate its every move. History is never just in the past. It is the blueprint of tomorrow. The transformation of Persia into Iran was fueled by religious revolution and the clash of empires. But the roots of these religious clashes go back much further. To understand the explosive origins of the faith that reshaped the Middle East and gave birth to these modern conflicts, you need to see how the Islamic Empire first stormed out of the desert. Click the video on your screen to watch the true epic story of how Islam began.